Hello everyone, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we'll dive into an intense and emotional chapter where Tu Tieu remains unconscious in the hospital, her life and the babies hanging by a thread. Behind the sterile walls, a dark scheme unfolds as Uri's mother bribes a doctor to harm the unborn child. But Tu Tieu uncovers the plot just in time, leading to a dramatic confrontation that could change everything. Stay with us until the end to witness the suspense, the heartbreak, and the ultimate fight for life. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. Tu Tieu lies unconscious in the hospital, her condition critical, and the fate of her unborn child hanging in the balance. Uri's mother, desperate to remove the baby from their lives, secretly bribes a doctor to carry out a dangerous plan. As the clock ticks, Uri senses something suspicious and follows his instincts. He catches the doctor in the act, confronting him in a tense, heart-pounding moment. With the truth exposed, Uri calls the police, leading to the doctor's arrest and the unraveling of Uri's mother's plot. In the aftermath of the chaos, Tu Tieu slowly regains consciousness, her hand instinctively reaching for her stomach. The doctor's betrayal is over, but the emotional scars remain. Still, there is relief. Both Tu Tieu and her baby have survived, proving that love, courage, and vigilance can protect even the most fragile life. Fan Bourine. The pale glow of the hospital corridor lights felt colder than usual, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the tension. Machines beeped in a steady rhythm, but each sound struck Uri's heart like a ticking clock, counting down to something he feared to name. On the hospital bed, Tu Tieu lay completely still, her face almost as white as the sheets that covered her. Her breathing was shallow, her lips dry. The doctors had warned that if she didn't regain consciousness soon, the baby's life could be in danger. Uri sat beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly, whispering words she couldn't hear. "Please, wake up," he murmured, voice cracking. "Our baby needs you. I need you." From the corner of the room, Uri stood silently, arms crossed, watching Uri with a worried expression. He had been here for hours, refusing to leave, as if some unseen shadow was looming over them. That shadow had a name. Me, Uri. She arrived quietly, dressed in an elegant coat, her perfume lingering in the sterile air. Her expression was unreadable, almost too calm for a woman visiting her critically ill daughter-in-law. She stepped to the bedside, looking down at Tu Tieu with feigned pity. "It's such a shame," she said softly, though her tone carried no warmth. "She's so fragile. Maybe this is nature's way of—" "Don't," Uri cut in sharply, his voice like steel. "Don't even finish that sentence." Her eyes narrowed briefly, but she quickly masked it with a gentle smile. "I'm only concerned for the family, for the future of the child." Uri felt a chill run down his spine. Something in her voice felt rehearsed, calculated. Later that night, when Uri finally left the room to speak to the doctor, Uri lingered. "He saw me," Uri step outside, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice dropped low, but Uri could still hear fragments. "Yes, tonight. Make sure it's done. No mistakes." A cold realization hit him. She wasn't just waiting for fate to take Tu Tieu's child. She was planning it. Uri's suspicion deepened when, an hour later, a new doctor entered the room. He wasn't the usual physician assigned to Tu Tieu, and something about the way he avoided eye contact felt wrong. He checked the IV line, adjusted the drip, then pulled a small vial from his pocket. Yuri's heartbeat thundered in his ears. That's not standard procedure. He stepped closer. Hey, what are you doing? The doctor froze, stammering. Just routine medication. Routine my ass, Yuri snapped, yanking the vial from his hand. He looked at the label. An unmarked glass container with no hospital identification. Yuri didn't wait for an explanation. Security, he shouted, his voice echoing down the hall. Yuri rushed back into the room just as 2 guards arrived, followed by the head nurse. The so-called doctor tried to slip away, but Yuri blocked the door. Check his pockets. Now. Inside, they found another vial of the same substance. The nurse's face went pale. This isn't ours. It's dangerous for both mother and child. Yuri's chest tightened as he turned to his mother, who had just stepped back into the room. She tried to feign confusion. What's going on here? But Yuri wasn't having it. I heard you, on the phone. You paid him to harm the baby, didn't you? Her lips curled into a cold smile. You think you can prove that? Unfortunately for her, Yuri already had. He pulled out his phone, showing the audio recording of her earlier conversation. Yuri's face turned red, not with embarrassment, but with fury. Call the police, Yuri ordered. Now. The guards restrained the fake doctor as he tried to escape. Minutes later, the police arrived, taking both him and me, Yuri, away for questioning. Her shouts of protest faded down the corridor, but the damage, the betrayal, was carved deep into Yuri's heart. The room was left in tense silence. Yuri stood at Tu Tieu's side again, his hand trembling as he stroked her hair. You're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you or our child. Yuri stepped closer, resting a reassuring hand on Yuri's shoulder. She's strong. She'll make it. The steady beeping of the monitor filled the room again, but now it felt less like a countdown and more like a promise. Time still ticking, life still holding on. Yuri leaned forward, his forehead touching Tu Tieu's. Come back to me, he whispered, before I lose my mind. And then, as if his voice had traveled through the deep fog in her mind, Tu Tieu's fingers twitched. The fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway flickered faintly, casting ghostly shadows along the sterile walls. Outside room 304, Yuri stood frozen, his fingers digging into his hair, his breathing uneven. Inside, Tu Tieu lay motionless, her face pale, lips barely parted as the steady beep, beep, beep of the monitor filled the air. The doctor's voice replayed in his head like a cruel echo. If she doesn't wake soon, the baby might not survive. Yuri's chest tightened. He pressed his forehead to the glass, whispering, Please, both of you, hang on. Meanwhile, in a dim corner of the hospital parking lot, Yuri stood with a tall man in a white coat. Her voice was cold, deliberate. You understand what needs to be done. Quietly. No traces. The doctor hesitated, but the thick envelope in her hand dissolved his doubt. Understood. Yuri, returning from the cafeteria, caught the tail end of the conversation. His gut twisted as he recognized the voice and the intent. He quickly ducked behind a pillar, his eyes narrowing as the exchange continued. The doctor's expression was grim, his handshake with Yuri sealing the deal. Inside the room, Tu Tieu's fingers twitched faintly, but she didn't wake. The monitor's rhythm spiked suddenly, drawing the nurse's attention. Yuri was at her side in an instant, holding her hand, trying to will his warmth into her cold skin. Downstairs, Yuri's heart pounded as he followed the doctor toward the pharmacy wing. Through a small window, he watched the man prepare a syringe, the liquid inside glinting under the harsh light. No, this isn't medicine. Yuri burst into the chief nurse's office, breathless. Call security and the police, now. Within minutes, chaos erupted in the ward. The doctor's face drained of color as uniformed officers stormed in, seizing the syringe from his trembling hands. Uri, waiting anxiously in the corridor, turned pale when she saw the officers leading him away in cuffs. Back in room 304, as if sensing the danger had passed, Tu Tieu's eyes fluttered open. Uri leaned over her, tears spilling freely. She managed a faint smile, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "The baby?" Uri choked out. "Safe. You're both safe." Outside, Uri watched silently from the doorway, relief flooding his face. For now, the storm had passed. But the war with Uri was far from over. The echo of hurried footsteps filled the hospital corridor as security escorted Yuri's mother away. Yet Yuri knew this was not the end. Her betrayal wasn't just an attack on their unborn child. It was a knife plunged deep into the heart of trust itself. He sat beside Tu Tieu's bed, holding her fragile hand, feeling the faint pulse beneath her skin. Her breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of her chest a reminder of how close she had come to slipping away. Uri brushed a loose strand of hair from her forehead. She tried to. His voice faltered, then steadied. "But I swear to you, no one will ever touch you or our child again." Tu Tieu's eyelids fluttered open slightly, her gaze hazy from exhaustion. A tear escaped down her cheek. "I heard your voice," she whispered. "Even when I was fading, I followed it back." Uri's heart clenched. He wanted to tell her everything. The hospital surveillance footage, the doctor's testimony, the damning audio recording. But he knew the truth would weigh heavily on her already fragile body. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. "Rest now. I'll handle everything." In the interrogation room, Yuri's mother sat beneath the harsh glare of a single overhead light. Her hands were folded neatly on the table, her face composed, almost serene. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she told the investigators, her tone smooth. "I would never harm my grandchild." But the evidence told another story. A small vial found in her purse, the nurse's statement, the faint trace of a sedative in Tu Tieu's IV line. Still, her eyes never wavered, cold and calculating, as though she already had a way out. Uri stood outside the glass window, watching her. He recognized that look. It was the same one she wore whenever she made a move in the family's business. Always 2 steps ahead, always prepared for the counterstrike. That night, the hospital was quiet. The only sounds were the distant hum of machines and the faint beeping of monitors. Uri dozed in the chair next to Tu Tieu's bed, his hand still wrapped protectively around hers. A sudden buzz from his phone jolted him awake. Unknown. Number. She will not stop. No name. No call history. Just those 4 words, sitting like ice in stone. He scanned the room, then the hallway beyond the glass panel of the door. Empty. But his instincts screamed otherwise. The next morning, the tension in the air was palpable. Uri had arranged for extra security outside Tu Tieu's room. Still, as the hours passed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was getting closer. Late in the afternoon, a figure appeared at the far end of the corridor. The man walked slowly, deliberately, carrying a clipboard as if he belonged there. But Yuri noticed the details. The badge that was slightly crooked, the way the man's eyes darted toward the room instead of the patient files. Uri stood, positioning himself directly in the doorway. "Can I help you?" His tone was calm, but his stance made it clear. No one entered without his permission. The man hesitated, then forced a smile. "Routine check." "On who?" Uri's voice was like steel. The man's silence spoke louder than words. Uri took a step forward, and the stranger backed away, disappearing down the hall before security could intercept him. That night, Uri sat by Tu Tieu's bedside, watching her sleep. Her face was pale but peaceful, framed by the soft light from the bedside lamp. He thought of all the battles he had fought in life: boardroom wars, family rivalries, power struggles. But none of them had prepared him for this. This was different. This was personal. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a picture. Blurry, dark, but unmistakable. The image showed the exterior of Tu Tieu's hospital room, taken from the hallway just outside. Uri's grip tightened around the device. Whoever sent it was close. Too close. The next day, the news broke. Uri's mother had been released on bail. The announcement hit him like a punch to the chest. He had hoped the legal process would keep her away, but he underestimated her influence. That evening, as he stepped out to take a call, Uri caught a glimpse of her in the parking lot, standing beneath a flickering street lamp. She didn't approach, didn't speak, just stood there, watching him with an expression that was both warning and promise. When he returned to the room, Tu Tieu was awake, looking at him with quiet fear. "She's coming back, isn't she?" Uri didn't lie. "Yes, but this time, I'll be ready." He started sleeping less, his ears tuned to every creak of the floor, every faint sound outside the door. He memorized the shift changes of the nurses, checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times a night. One evening, while walking back from the vending machine, Uri heard hushed voices coming from the stairwell. He moved closer, catching fragments of conversation. "Tomorrow night, no witnesses." His pulse quickened. He opened the door abruptly, but the voices stopped. The stairwell was empty, the echo of footsteps already fading. That night, he made a decision. If they were going to come for Tu Tieu and the baby, they would have to go through him first, and he would not make it easy. He arranged for a small hidden camera above the door, kept a chair propped under the handle when they slept, and kept his phone recording at all times. He knew it might not be enough, but it was something. At 3 a.m., he woke to the faint sound of metal scraping. His eyes snapped open. The chair wedged under the door shifted slightly. Uri was on his feet instantly, moving to block the entrance. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice low but lethal. Silence. Then, retreating footsteps. The next morning, Tu Tieu reached for his hand. "I don't want you to fight this alone," she whispered. "We're in this together." Uri looked at her, at the woman who had nearly lost her life because of his own mother's hatred. His jaw tightened. "I know, but I need you safe first. Everything else we'll face when the time comes." And deep down, they both understood. The time would come sooner than they wanted. Tu Tieu lies unconscious in the hospital, her condition critical, and the fate of her unborn child hanging in the balance. Uri's mother, desperate to remove the baby from their lives, secretly bribes a doctor to carry out a dangerous plan. As the clock ticks, Uri senses something suspicious and follows his instincts. He catches the doctor in the act, confronting him in a tense, heart-pounding moment. With the truth exposed, Uri calls the police, leading to the doctor's arrest and the unraveling of Yuri's mother's plot. In the aftermath of the chaos, Tu Tieu slowly regains consciousness, her hand instinctively reaching for her stomach. The doctor's betrayal is over, but the emotional scars remain. Still, there is relief. Both Tu Tieu and her baby have survived, proving that love, courage, and vigilance can protect even the most fragile life.